And going live. It's preparing, and I will let you know in just a second when it's live. Okay, we are now live on YouTube.
Okay. I'll wait till my clock says 6 o'clock on the dot. All right. I'm calling to order this special meeting of the Caneo Open Space Conservation Agency. And will you join me in the salute to the flag? I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United
States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one
nation, under God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with
liberty and justice
for all.
for all. Thank you. May we have the roll call, please?
Vice Chair Bill De La Pena.
Present.
Director Huffer.
Yes.
Director Jones.
Here.
Director Nichols.
Yes.
And Chair Skay.
Present. All right, our next item is public comments, and I note we have 2 speakers who wish to speak. If we could go to Larry Garrison first.
Okay, Larry is entering the room now. And Larry, if you could just unmute yourself.
Yes,
And
I'm
I'll just note for 3 minutes for speakers, so.
okay.
Please proceed.
I'll try and keep this really quick. My name is Larry Garrison. I live on Bright Star Street. The back of my house faces the parking lot. I've lived here since 2018. What we have experienced has been a nightmare. There have been health issues because of the dust. Our house is constantly filled with dust through the roof, the vents, which we've tried to make smaller. Besides that, my wife works with Apple. I am a journalist with ABC News, Good Morning America 2020. I have an Ventura County press pass and also an LAPD press pass. I work from home. Both of us cannot work from home because it is so loud with people constantly walking by. We have homeless people early in the morning. We have drug deals that are going on in the lot. There is constant speeding on Avenida de Los Arblas and also on Big Sky. We've had a tremendous amount of vandalism to our house. We've had the sheriff, I've worked with the chief. We've had people looking in our house. We've had people walking dogs on the lawn. We've had people ripping out fruit trees and stealing them. A tremendous amount of litter. Basically, what I'm asking, which is pretty reasonable, you have other lots where people could walk 2 or 3 blocks. If you close this lot, I want to keep the hiking trails open. We use them. We love them. I'd like to see, we have a problem with parking. We have signs out that people they'll run over them, they'll push them down. They park in front of your house, they'll block the driveway. Bottom line, if either permit parking or if you went the route of having an officer sitting and watching while you do the transition, that would be great. But bottom line, it's you know what happened with Paradise Falls. Out of desperation, I was seeing it vandalized. I was seeing people defecate in the river. I had to call in ABC News. Unfortunately,
Mr. Garrison, thank you, and we are aware of that. Could you sum up? Your time has actually expired.
Okay. In summary, I'm begging you guys to consider closing this lot, moving it down, having better policing in the hills so we don't have homeless moving in, and having more of a safety factor in the area. And I thank you for your time, and I do pay my taxes, and if it's one person that's bothered, but it's not one person, you'll hear from other people also. And
Thank you,
thank you
Mr.
so much
Garza.
for listening to me.
All right. Next, we have David Lake.
Okay, Mr. Lake should be coming in. Okay, we can see Mr. Lake, but you are in mute.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Oops, not now. Unmute again.
I just want to kind of confirm what Larry just said, that the conditions when we purchased our homes, and I spent my life savings to purchase this home in an area that I loved and had been hiking in for 25 years, have deteriorated to such an extent that I can't really sleep past about 5:40 a.m. any day of the week. The noise is unbelievable. The parking lot now in the last 5 years has started to attract 500 to 1,000 vehicle trips per day. And the car alarms and the car stereos and the car doors start at before 6 a.m. Often there's a line of cars waiting before the security guard shows up to open the parking lot. Ostensibly at 6 a.m., but he often shows up at 5:30. And I can't sleep. This past year, I was forced to work from home, and my home office is in the back room that faces this parking lot. And I could not concentrate. I could not hear my calls. I could not work. I've lost my job. I can't concentrate. I can't work from home anymore. This situation is too intense. It needs to change. I've submitted a proposal that the parking be moved to remote lots that provide equal access to Paradise Falls and are not in residential areas. I hike from these lots all the time. It's not difficult to cross the creek. It's not difficult to get to Paradise Falls from any of these parking lots. I do it routinely. And I would also like to suggest that if there's a urban planner or a transportation planner in the room, that you really read a great book called The High Cost of Free Parking. It was authored by my advisor at the Transportation Planning Program at UCLA, and it is a how-to guide of how to destroy a neighborhood. And what you do to destroy a neighborhood is you put a big free parking venue in it and attract thousands of vehicles to a place where people are trying to live. There are no other parking areas for trail venues in this region. Similar venues that are free, they're all $7 to $12. All of the Topanga and Mugu State Park and the county parks charge $7 to $12 to park. COSCA is the only agency that brings in thousands of vehicles from across the region and makes the citizens of Thousand Oaks pay the cost of maintaining these ridiculous parking lots. This parking lot 50 feet from where I'm trying to sleep costs the city's citizens of Thousand Oaks $40,000 or $50,000 a year because of the upkeep for the porta potty, the dust mitigation, which doesn't work, by the way. I hack my lungs out during the dry season. The dust is intense and it
Mr.
makes us
Lake,
sick.
your time has expired. Can you sum up, please?
To sum up, there are many alternatives for putting the vehicle trips and the cars in remote locations that provide equal access to Paradise Falls. There's no reason at all to bring them into a little corner of suburbia at this point. I know it was fine when there were 100 cars or 50 cars. There are now a lot more cars than that, and it's not changing. It's only getting worse. And the homeless people have discovered the lot. As Larry said, it needs to be closed and the traffic needs to be moved. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Lake. We don't have any more speaker cards. I understand there were 33 comment cards that were submitted, and those will be added to the record. And let's see, so now we can go on to the next item, election of chair and vice chair. And nominations are open for the chair.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Director Bill de la Pena.
you say nominations are open for the chair.
And vice chair, but let's do chair first.
I nominate you, Rory Skay, to continue as chair of COSCA.
All right, thank you. Yes, Mr. Huffer. Been moved and seconded. Are there any other nominations? The nominations are closed. May we have a vote, please?
Vice Chair Bill de la Pena,
Yes?
Director Huffer,
Yes.
Director Jones,
Aye.
Director Nichols,
Yes.
Chair Skay.
Yes. And now nominations for vice chair. And I will note that we have our tradition has been to alternate between a city council person and a CRPD director. And I believe Vice Chair Bill de la Pena is currently vice chair. So if the board wants to keep with tradition, I would suggest that that you nominate a CRPD director.
Yes,
Up
and
to
with
you.
that, yes, and absolutely, you're correct. And with that, I nominate Doug Nichols to be vice chair.
Okay.
I'll second that motion.
Seconded by Mr. Huffer. Thank you. No other nominations. The nominations are closed. May we have the roll call of the item, please?
Vice Chair Bill de la Pena,
Yes?
Director Huffer,
Yes.
Director Jones,
Aye.
Director Nichols,
Yes, and
Chair
thank you for
Skay.
your support.
Yes. Congratulations, Doug.
Thank you. Thank you all for your support.
And thank you all for supporting me. Next, we have authorization to transfer the 20-acre Rancho Potrero Equestrian Center from COSCA to CRPD.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the board. Today's action item is transferring the 20-acre Rancho Potrero Equestrian Center to the CRPD, and there are some other approvals baked into this. So I'll provide some background as we move into the item. COSCA owns a 20-acre parcel of real property located at 4790 Lynn Road in Newberry Park, commonly known as Rancho Potrero Equestrian Center. A map of the property is included in the staff report for this item, but for clarity in the public, I'll note that this transfer does not include any of the open space portion of the Rancho Potrero open space area. Since January of 2007, COSCA has leased the property to the city of Thousand Oaks. Pursuant to that lease agreement, the city developed and improved the property to operate as a public equestrian facility. And COSCA conveyed to city the title and all interest in the building, structures, equipment, and other improvements on the equestrian center property for the duration of the lease agreement. Subsequently, the city established agreements with third-party operators to operate the equestrian programs. Within the past year, a new operator, Ride On LA, has been managing the equestrian center. Both the city and COSCA support the continuing operations of the equestrian center and understand that it's best achieved with a long-term operator and oversight by an agency that's best equipped to oversee active recreational programming. With this new partner available for long-term operation of the facility, the city and COSCA have evaluated the current organization of agency relationships and determined that it is in the best interest of both agencies that the management functions for the equestrian center be consolidated with an agency that has a mission dedicated to achieve active recreational uses and a long-term management capacity. Neither the city nor COSCA currently operate active public recreation programming. The CRPD has this expertise to oversee the equestrian center, and they have expressed an interest in doing so. COSCA and the city agree that consolidating the ownership of the property, ownership of the infrastructure, and the oversight of the operator with CRPD is the most efficient structure for long-term success. So the parties to the larger project that are going on include the city, COSCA, and the CRPD. For COSCA's part, the discussions have been limited to the equestrian center. The city and the CRPD have broader property relationships with other specific properties, and adjustments in these relationships are occurring in concert with the equestrian center. This evening, the COSCA board is being asked to approve only those items that relate to COSCA's ownership of the property under the equestrian center and those parts of the agreement. A few details here. Implementing the recommended transfer has several steps. First, the city and COSCA must agree to terminate the existing lease of the property. This temporarily consolidates the ownership interests in the 20-acre property and removes the encumbrance of the current lease. COSCA will then transfer ownership of the 20-acre parcel to CRPD. Concurrently, the city will transfer ownership of the site infrastructure to CRPD to consolidate the assets of the equestrian center. CRPD may then enter into long-term agreements with the operator. In your staff report, you received several documents. One is the draft master agreement, and this includes those items that are generally germane to the city and CRPD, as well as those between COSCA. So the draft agreement describes the terms of the property transfer from COSCA to CRPD. So this is a draft document that you received, so there are changes still pending in it. Those relate primarily to items not related to COSCA's interest in there. So the COSCA related sections in the agreement you got should be accurate now. There's also an agreement to terminate the lease with between COSCA and the city to remove the encumbrance on the property prior to transfer. The last item that we haven't mentioned, it's also in the master agreement, relates to the Olympia Farms site. I'll share my screen here just to toss up a map. This is the larger Rancho Potrero property. The area we're talking about for transfer is up at the top, labeled with 6. This is the map from the Rancho Potrero specific plan. The Olympia Farm site is over here at site number 1. In addition to the proposed transfer of land, CRPD is requesting COSCA authorize access to the former Olympia Farm site located on the Rancho Potrero open space to construct a picnic and school and camp activity facility that was originally described in the Rancho Potrero specific plan. COSCA's been aware of this project since the specific plan was created and has anticipated its eventual construction. Creating a space to bring local students and other young people to interact with the natural landscapes has great social value and promotes caring and good stewardship of natural lands. I will unshare here. Tonight's recommendation is to authorize the transfer of 20-acre parcel of land containing Rancho Potrero Equestrian Center to CRPD and authorizes COSCA board chair to execute the associated master agreement and the transfer deed. While not originally mentioned in the recommendation in your staff report, we will also need to approve the lease termination agreement. That was an agreement that materialized a little bit later. With that, I'm available for questions, but we also have Tim Giles from the city and Tom Hare from CRPD that can address non-COSCA related items or provide any additional information.
Tim or Tom, did you have anything else you wanted to add to the staff report?
No, I thought Brian was extremely eloquent and said everything needed. Yeah, we're very excited about this. I think this is a great multi-agency agreement. Excited to work with COSCA, the city, and ride on with this and provide some additional recreational opportunities for the community. I think this is perfect how it aligns with CRPD's mission, and I think this is a really good deal. We're very excited.
This is
Very good.
largely an evolution of a good partnership that has worked over the years and really allows us to move forward and do some exciting things and better utilize this facility for the community's interest.
Indeed. I will note that the property has transferred a number of times. Actually, MRCA originally owned it and turned it over to, I think, first to the city, and then we did the COSCA switch and then back to the city. But this looks like a very good solution to maintaining that equestrian center. Are any other board members have questions or comments? Yes, Director Bill de la Pena.
Thank you. Let me just remove my raised hand so that I don't forget about it. This vote tonight, and this is a question for Tim Giles. This vote tonight is the first step in the transfer, and then it will go to council. Please refresh my memory. I don't know if council voted on this first.
No, this is scheduled to be brought to the city council next Tuesday on March 26th.
It is for next Tuesday. Okay. All right. And so, yes, this has gone through different hands over the years, but I would agree that this is a much better fit for CRPD than it is for the city of Thousand Oaks due to its recreational nature. So I would very much support this and would love to move approval of staff recommendation.
Thank you, Claudia. Do we have a second to Claudia's? Yes, Director Nichols.
Yeah, I just had some additional questions. I didn't want to preclude someone who wanted to second the motion, though.
I think you're it.
Okay. All right. I did have a couple of questions. I'm not quite sure who to address this to, but I'll just speak them up. Just to clarify, as far as the recommendation is concerned, I see in the report is the transfer of the 20-acre parcel. Then in the body of the report, there's also reference to access to the Olympia Farm site, which was mentioned, but I didn't know if that was a second recommendation. And then third, there was the, which you also mentioned verbally, was to approve the lease term agreement. So is that, do I understand this correctly, that there's actually 3 recommendations as part of this action tonight?
Well, I can address that. There's actually 2 because the master agreement has the terms of the Olympia Farm site baked in. So I just mentioned it because I thought it was important that people knew that COSCA still has an active interest there, and that we have that the specific plan developed for that area is still relevant. And so it's only the lease termination agreement and the master agreement.
Okay, thank you. And then a follow-up to that is you mentioned that the master agreement was in the packet, and I was out of the office all day, the home office all day today, and have not been able to spend a whole lot of time looking at that master agreements that just recently came out. And perhaps you can, maybe help me, because I know you mentioned that it's in draft format, and obviously the city needs to address this, the park district need to address this. But when you say it's only relevant for COSCA as far as the COSCA parts of the agreement, what parts are those parts? I'm trying to distinguish. Again, I just reviewed it briefly, so please forgive me. But what is it that is actually being presented to COSCA to agree to, and what part goes to the city and/or district as a separate action?
So the part that I have presented to you tonight as the sections of that agreement that are pertinent to COSCA are the transfer of the 20-acre parcel over to CRPD, so they would own it. And the termination agreement with the city over the lease. The master agreement has a lot of other items in it that are they're tangential. They're important to the agencies involved in this transaction. It's a multi-level transaction. When COSCA signs it, the parts that we will be obligated to is the transfer of the property and the termination of the lease with the city. And that because the lease, terminating the lease removes an encumbrance on the property, so title can pass more clearly.
Okay. And thank you, Mr. Stark. And I do appreciate that. I know there are multiple steps. I mean, there's a lot of moving parts to this and multiple agencies, and I understand that. But when it comes to the, I guess your description of it as a draft master agreement, I presume you're stating that because the essence of it has been addressed, and maybe there's a couple fine points that may not be critical as far as the ultimate decision, but it's just, until the city and park district kind of, finalize, basically it covers the gist of it. It's just a couple fine points. Is that correct?
It's my understanding that, it's a complicated agreement and there are still some negotiations over certain sections of it that pertain to relationships between CRPD and the city on other properties that for which COSCA does not have a direct interest.
Okay. And so, don't want to belabor this, but as far as those agreements, none of that in essence would change the COSCA parts of this agreement, that whatever this body agrees to tonight, that would stand as it is written. And it's only between the city and the park district that things may or may not change.
That is my interpretation.
Okay.
Largely with a document of this nature, there's a number of things that can arise as we try and get all the documents that are necessary to complete the transaction fully executed and recorded and all of those kinds of things. So with the essence of the agreement that you have, that is not changing. But as we move forward, if there's a need to execute another document or to revise a date or something along those lines that will allow us to complete the transaction without unnecessarily calling the COSCA board or the city council or the CRPD board back into session to ratify minor non-substantive issues, we want to be able to do that to move forward expeditiously. But in terms of the substance of the agreement, the substance will not change.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that clarification. Like I said, I know there's a lot of moving parts and interested parties and I appreciate all your efforts to make this happen because I wholeheartedly support it. And I do like the fact that it's better aligning all three agencies' missions with the role in this property. And I'm looking forward to it. So thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. Nichols. Any other board members have a comment or a question? Yes, Director Huffer.
I want to add my support to the agreement, as Director Nichols said. The three agencies that are involved all have certain roles, but it certainly makes sense that the Park District, given their purpose in life, if you will, to provide recreational programs, to be able to provide equestrian services makes tremendous sense. And the fact that the Park District will be working with Ride-On as the manager of the equestrian facility. The Park District has a very long relationship and very long positive relationship with Ride-On, and this will just be continuing what has been an excellent relationship. So I fully support this as well.
All right.
Madam Chairwoman?
Yes, Director Jones.
I'd just like to second what Chuck just said. We've had a great relationship with Ride-On, and I think it couldn't go to a better group and one that provides a wide array of services, including the help for those that are handicapped. So when I saw this on the agenda, I was very happy with what we're about to do.
Very good. All right. If there are no other comments, may we have a motion and a second? May we have the roll call vote, please?
Director Bill De La Pena?
Yes.
Director Huffer?
Yes.
Director Jones?
Aye.
Vice Chair Nichols?
Yes.
And Chair Skay?
Yes. All right. The next item is.
Hey, Chair Skay.
Yes, Director, Mr. Friedel.
Yeah, thanks. I just, because of the nature of this item and the volume of work involved over the course of 2 years, I don't do this with every staff report when staff does their normal job, but this was sort of an extraordinary amount of effort between
Tom Hare and Tim Giles, and I know the city attorney's office. So there was just a tremendous amount of work. When the city and the park district boards and council get it, you'll see the stack of paper and the amount of agreements that are all associated with it. But this is a great opportunity to point out the hard work of those two staff members with the city attorney's office. And then just for historical record keeping, I know Chair Skate, you mentioned the acquisition of the early property, but you didn't say you personally were part of that as a member of the, MRCA and Conservancy, and just not beyond just the Rancho Potrero, but even what is now the national park property and state park property. So, we wouldn't even be talking about this if your work didn't happen 30 years ago. So
Thank you very much. In fact, I have a photo that someone took of Tex Ward and myself standing on the hill before Dos Vientos was developed, but we had just acquired this chunk, formerly called the Huck property. All right, thank you. We'll go on to item 4C, consider formation of an ad hoc committee for the Wildwood Park parking lot.
Madam Chair, members of the board, during the board member comments portion of the February 10th, 2021 COSCA board meeting, Director Nichols suggested the possibility of forming an ad hoc committee of the COSCA board to discuss the management of the parking lot in response to some public comment on the issue that was submitted prior to the meeting. We couldn't address that at that meeting because it wasn't noticed, but formation of a committee requires an action of the board, and the item must be on an advertised agenda. Over the past 4 years, COSCA board has received regular annual reports on the multiple actions taken by COSCA to address neighborhood concerns. Currently, COSCA staff are not aware of new concerns that have not already been considered by COSCA or reported to the board. The most recent staff update was also included in your board package. The decision before the board tonight is whether to proceed to form a committee and commit the associated staff time to this effort. Should the board wish to create an ad hoc committee, the board should appoint 2 directors for this purpose. And we had 2 speakers earlier on this item that we let go earlier, so they didn't have to sit through the whole meeting. But we did receive a number of public comments, and those have been submitted to you as a supplement to our agenda, so they will all be entered into the record. With that, I can answer any questions before kicking it on over to Rory and the board.
Comments yes, Director Nichols.
Thank you. I feel obligated to say a few words since I was the one that brought this up. And first of all, I want to say, as I was having my memory refreshed by going through these reports of all the work that staff has been involved in, I remember reading these before and realized how much effort the staff has been taking to try and resolve this. I don't know if maybe resolve is the right word, but certainly listen and pay attention to what has been brought up and try to address as best possible at the administrative level what can be done. And so when I brought this suggestion up, it wasn't as though that an ad hoc committee would come in as a savior and solve all these problems or issues, but more of the fact that it continues to come up, continues to be a discussion, and whether the proposed solution remains to be, which remains to be seen, is going to work or not, we don't know. But I just felt if there was a committee available, and I'm certainly interested to hear from my peers, colleagues, to assist in this regard in some way, I thought it might be helpful. So curious to hear what the other board members have to say.
Director Heffer.
Yes. It was pointed out that we've been getting information from the COSCA staff, from CRPD staff, from city staff for more than 5 years on the comments and complaints and suggestions that have been coming from neighbors and people who utilize Wildwood Park. As Director Nichols pointed out, staff of all three agencies have put in a lot of time and effort to address the issues, and quite a few changes. If you go back and review all the reports, quite a few changes have been made over the years, certainly not resolving all of the issues. And I personally am not convinced that no matter what was done, it would not make everyone happy. And that's going to be true of any problem that you try to solve. I'm not quite sure what purpose there would be in establishing a committee or subcommittee when so much work has already been done. In the staff report that Mr. Stark provided, he stated that there are no fiscal impacts, which isn't really totally true. There are no direct fiscal impacts, but the additional demands on staff time from COSCA staff, Park District staff, and city staff could or might be fairly significant. And it's not like staff from these three agencies are doing nothing. They continue to work on this very frequently. So I don't see any real need to establish a committee like this.
Thank you, Director Huffer. Any other comment?
Well, can I don't know how to raise my hand here.
Oh, no, I can see you, Ed. Go ahead.
You'll forgive me. We were working on this when I was still on the park board. I know that somewhere in the distant future, I guess, there's going to be an entrance over in the Rancho Caneo area that would allow people to get into the park. It'll be a little longer route. And it looks to me, because of the level of complaints and the continuing, I mean, I walk door to door campaigning, and that's whenever I walk on Big Sky or that street right around the corner there, that's all I hear is about the problem with the parking lot. So it seems to me that we either have to, abandon it, and that doesn't seem feasible, or we have to build some kind of protection. I don't know if that's possible, to prevent the dust and so forth. And I don't know what you do about the noise. I mean, those two things are incompatible, really. And I know what they're going through because I've stood on those properties, and I've heard the noise and I've seen the dust that arises when a lot of people are going in there. So I don't know if we need a committee or not, but I believe when you have something you've been having complaints about for 5 years, we don't want to hear this the rest of our lives. I don't know what, Jim, do you know what action could be taken to ameliorate this?
Yeah, well, if I had the solution, I would have told you guys before. I wouldn't have kept it a secret all this time. But I would say, without making light of it, there are some unfinished, things that we continue to work toward, and we talked about as long as 3 years ago. And specifically, that will be the new bridge that would allow us to work to change the address of Wildwood to Hill Canyon, or even establish a more robust parking and trailhead at, near Rancho Caneo. So once that bridge is done, then visitors coming from Camarillo, Oxnard, Moore Park, Santa Rosa Valley would find access a lot more readily and convenient coming through those other trailheads. I don't pretend to think people coming from Thousand Oaks are going to necessarily go to another trailhead if they're really familiar with Wildwood. I mean, because we have been directing people to try other trails, to try other access points. So, I don't have an answer. I do believe that there is a great solution in the hands of the whole entire community there. If they really want no parking in their neighborhood, there is a follow-up item they can do with Public Works in terms of a permit parking only. But that's really resident driven. That's not us. That's the residents themselves getting the sufficient number of signatures supporting that, residential only parking. And so I'm not sure where they've gotten to in that effort, but that is clearly something they can do to keep the parking off the residential streets. But use of the Arbalest parking lot is probably, it's not realistic to say that's not going to happen. So what we can do is minimize or try to, encourage a lot of other locations. The most significant will be when the bridge is done. So those are the two things I can see. There's certainly other ideas that have been kicked around, I've read, but
excuse me, our council is waving. Alicia, did you have admonition?
Well, I certainly don't want to stifle comment, and I do apologize for interrupting you, Jim, because I know you're being responsive to the director. But really, the only item that is for your consideration today is whether or not to form that ad hoc committee. Coming up with solutions at this point it's not agendized. This is not what you're here to discuss. So if the discussions lead toward whether or not you should formulate this ad hoc committee, then that's great. But if it's going beyond trying to figure out a solution right now on the fly, that it would not be an appropriate discussion under the Brown Act. Thank you. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Ms. Lieberman.
Well, could I just say one more thing?
Of course.
I appreciate what both Doug and Chuck are trying to achieve here. And I don't know if one more committee is going to, get us closer to a solution. But if we could form a committee with definite guidelines, like, you can have this problem for X number of days or weeks or whatever, and we want a comprehensive report back, say, at our next meeting, and it would be an ad hoc committee. In other words, the life of the committee would end with its report. Seems to me that it might shed new light on this. Maybe there's a way to close part of the parking lot, the part closest to Big Sky and that side street that is back up to it. But I would be amenable to having a short-term committee, an ad hoc, just for the life of the report, and have a definite day where they give a report, and then that's the end of the committee. So I would agree with that.
Yes, Director Bill de la Pena.
Thank you. As I'm going through the staff report, I see that this bridge where the crossing that was mentioned was supposed to have been completed in the fall of 2019. What is the expected completion date?
So the construction is planned to start late fall this year, with the completion sometime in the spring of 2022.
So we're about 2 years behind schedule?
Yes.
And the reason being?
Those are permit time constraints, as well as temporary holdups in capital improvement projects due to budget constraints.
Okay.
Not to mention COVID.
And then it would be at that time that the address would be changed?
Yes. If we change it before, it creates a problem for the wastewater plant when, if you have too many people coming in, they walk up the road toward the wastewater plant, which wasn't designed for pedestrians, and it creates safety conflicts with trucks.
Okay, so this committee would then in essence just try to find some sort of measures between April and then the end of this year, basically. So that's just a meeting to find solutions for about 9-10 months. Yes.
I guess it remains to be seen what the impacts of a change would be. I think there may be some lag time in that. It does remain to be seen as to whether that change, what the impact of that change would be.
So I know we're just discussing the formation of the committee, but if we haven't had any sort of a petition by residents to ask for, what is it, resident permit parking, then, and it needs to come from the residents as we were told, then I don't see what other options there would be. I guess this is a question for Mr. Stark.
Options besides permit parking?
Yeah.
I mean, there, and without going into detail about the problems again, since we're discussing the committee, the items that have been brought up have been considered by staff. But there's not a silver bullet that that solves these problems, and most of the proposed solutions to parking problems simply move it around.
Okay, so it seems to me that Mr. Nichols, who brought up this item, would be interested in forming a committee, and then it sounds to me that Mr. Jones was interested perhaps in finding value in this committee. Do we need to then nominate the committee members tonight, or will that be done at a future time?
My sense is that if you authorize the committee tonight, that you would fill it.
Okay. Can I volunteer anyone?
I don't know.
Yeah, I'd be happy to serve on that.
I believe we first need a motion to create the committee.
You are absolutely right, but I want to make sure we have people willing to serve before we make that motion. Because I certainly, I mean, I personally would not be serving on this committee because I feel that we really have a very short window here and not sure how much we can accomplish. But if the desire is by my colleagues to perhaps work on something, then certainly I don't want to take that opportunity away from my colleagues.
Director Nichols?
Yes, and thank you, Director Bill Delapenny, for that comment. I'm not trying to convince the board or to talk the board into doing this. I just was offering that as a suggestion. And I too have looked at as I mentioned earlier, looked at the multitude of efforts that have been put together. And if the conclusion is that right now the only two possible solutions are already known and defined as far as what can be done and how they could be done, and even a timeline when it comes to the bridge, and there's nothing else out there, then I'm not sure that the committee would help to escort that process any further. And perhaps a better way to approach that would be if from Mr. Stark or other staff members, if there is new information and they do find that this issue does bubble up and could find the value in an ad hoc committee, perhaps that would be the point at which they could let us know and say, yeah, we've got some issues that really need some attention, and perhaps help us move that direction. But if everything has been brought up and maybe there's just disagreements on whether it's valuable or not from the public, and a committee wouldn't necessarily help to solve that, then again, I'd be happy just to wait and just to see if something does come up that the committee would be helpful in trying to resolve.
Yes, Claudia.
Yes, then perhaps we can have Mr. Huffer make a motion to that effect.
Well, I would, based on what Director Nichols has said, I would move that we table this agenda item for tonight.
Okay, we have a motion to table.
I know, I would second that then.
Seconded by Claudia. Any other discussion? All in favor of tabling the motion or the action, please say, oh, I'm sorry, we need a roll call vote.
Director Bill De La Pena?
I want to say yes, but incorporating the comments made by Director Nichols.
Director Huffer?
Yes.
Director Jones?
Aye.
Vice Chair Nichols?
Yes.
Chair Skay?
Yes. All right, thank you all for a lively discussion for an intractable problem. We have no other agenda items. Our next regular meeting would be Wednesday, May 12th. Was there anything else for the good of the order that either staff or directors wanted to bring up before we adjourn? Hearing none, we're adjourned, and thank you very much for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair
Thank
Skate.
you.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, everybody.